Welcome to the Final Girls podcast. I'm Anna Bogutskaya, your podcast host. Now, most of the time, this feed is dedicated to horror, film, and TV history, but occasionally I'm given the opportunity to chat to some of the most interesting filmmakers working in genre today. I'm coming out of a somewhat impromptu hiatus from the main feed to welcome once again to this podcast writer-director Julia Ducournau, the mind behind the cannibal coming-of-age film Raw and the Palme D'Or winning wild ride Titane. Julia's new film, Alpha, which also premiered at the Cannes Film Festival this year, is in UK and Irish cinemas now. It follows the titular Alpha, a rebellious 13-year-old who lives with her single mom, a doctor with an at-home practice amid a strange pandemic, a blood-borne disease that slowly turns those afflicted with it into marble. Their world is turned upside down when Alpha's estranged uncle Amin shows up. The past merges with the present as fear spreads in this, the most emotionally raw and potent of Ducournau's films so far. In our chat, we cover Ducournau's change of register for Alpha, her influences and intentions with the story, and the conundrum behind portraying a fictional disease. After you watch the film, let me know what you think of it by dropping me a line on hello@thefinalgirls.co.uk or drop me a message on the Final Girls Patreon. It's always a dream to interview her, so with all of that said, please enjoy my conversation with Julia Ducournau. First of all, it's so lovely to speak to you again. Congratulations on Alpha.
Thank you. So happy to see you again.
I'm always looking forward to one of your films, and I made sure to not read anything about it before I watched it. And when we last spoke about Titane, it really felt watching it like a punch in the face or in the gut. And this one was a completely different feeling. It was very melancholic, very haunting. It felt like swimming and almost drowning in a way. And I was wondering, did you, when you started making it, did you specifically want to shift gears in how you made your audience feel, or did the tone of the film kind of emerge by itself?
I had no agenda in the sense that I think I evolved, the world changed a lot, like not for a good, like not on the best way, not in the best way, obviously. You know, I never planned, like it's not like I was like, oh, I did this in Titane, so I'm not going to do this anymore, whatever. Although there is a sense of me in me that nothing good is being done while staying in your comfort zone. And I don't think that trying to, reproduce the same recipes is creatively, fertile. On the opposite, I really think that it's actually kind of restraining in many ways. And I certainly see filmmaking in general, going from film to film, as a continuous gesture, as just, trying to dig deeper and deeper into the material that I have within, and to try to expose myself more and more in the most sincere way possible and the most like raw and honest way possible. But certainly the darkness and the melancholy of this film is definitely something that I took from, what I feel right now, what we all feel right now, which is a state of shock and powerlessness as far as the turn that the world has taken for a while now, and that every day seems to be like postponing the end of this dark cycle. And I think that because nowadays we don't have the time distance, the historical distance was happening because it's all one overexpanding present. It's hard to fictionalize this, at least it is for me. Yet I had to catharsize these feelings, these fears that I have in me, this shock that I have in me, this hurt that I have in me. I think very naturally transferred this emotion to the first time that I felt that way, that I felt that somehow the future had become way darker, if there were any. And that was in the 90s when I was younger, at the peak of the AIDS pandemic. Definitely, I think that not only the world of today fueled Alpha very much, The same way that you transmit trauma, I feel, and that if you transmit it and you don't resolve it, you don't name it, you don't grieve it, things keep happening. I do feel that right now we are in a loop as well, that we're reliving things.
The way that you even describe it makes sense because there's an element of the film where the past and the present collapse onto each other,
Yeah.
and even the images of sort of disease or contagion are so varied, and kind of you never know which ones are happening to Min, which ones are happening in real life in the film, or which ones are imagined. You said that it's really hard to fictionalize the real life
Mhm.
dystopian reality that we're in right now. But can you tell me about the impetus to create a fictional disease for the purposes of making the film?
Well, that's the thing, is that what I wanted to explore here is the contamination of fear and how fear seeps into the interstices of society when something brutal happens, and that no one is able to embrace it or to name it or to, at the moment, as I said, conceptualize what happened, and how fear immediately always generates rejection and hate, which again, like talking just about this makes me feel that I'm talking about right now, obviously. So that was to me the entry point to the film. The idea of like how trauma can be transferred on younger generations if, again, grief hasn't happened. If grief, it's not that it hasn't happened, that it has been denied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think the fact that it has been denied by the world, by society, is very important here, because it's just that it doesn't happen, it's that it has been denied. People saying that my movie is an allegory of hate, I think is a little bit misleading, because if I had done a movie in which aid was the central topic, that's what I wanted to go through, I wouldn't have done this one. I think I would have made a movie that was historically accurate, and in which I would actually name the disease, and in which I would have shown the symptoms of the disease. Here again, to me, the biggest disease in the film is fear, 100%, and how it propagates.
And I wonder as well, because having seen your work, there is the through line of the body constantly, but in this case, it's a diseased body and how people react to it, and it
Mhm.
feels very tragic in a way. Like you were saying, it's the fear and the rejection that people feel in to many things, but particularly to anyone who is carrying a disease of any shape. And I think it's interesting, and I wonder, what you thought about particularly with Tahar Rahim's character, Amin, because he has a different kind of, he's an addict, and
Yeah.
he's carrying that with him, and at the same
Yeah.
time, he's infected with this bloodborne disease. How did you approach kind of the character and the reaction of other people, particularly to him, carrying this double stigma?
So he's a character that he's in limbo, right? I mean, he is stuck in between life and death, and in between present and past. And he exists in his relationship to mom, but mainly to Alpha. In a way, he helps Alpha emancipate from her mom's trauma. He helps her get out of it. He helps her acknowledge the fact that these traumas are not for her to bear. And in many ways, I think the reason why he manages to do that is because he's been shunned so much by society because of everything that he represents, is that he's very unapologetic, which is something that I really look up to in his character and in the way Taha also interpreted this character. I love this unapologetic aspect to him because it means that he is in between the unapologetic aspect of a child. He has a very childlike quality. He says things for what they are, and he has almost no filter. And at the same time, there is something that is extremely wise about him in the way he guides Alpha into this world and into finding the contours of herself in a world that has no contour, that is already in a state of of extreme already, and we know how also teenage years can be a period where you actually test your own extremes. But when you do that in a world that is already reaching its own extreme, it can lead to a maelstrom of a spiral down, if you wish. And he kind of like pulls her out of this by showing himself into all his vulnerability, by being extremely honest about it. He never patronizes her. He never like tries to sugarcoat his life, his diseases, as you say, plural. And I think that makes him a real hero for that, because he's the only one within the film that can abstract himself from what's the standards of society and what society's look imposes on the characters of the film.
Well, it's interesting how you describe him as the hero of the film. Then I wonder if you could talk about the mother character, who, forgive me if I did not catch it, but does not have a name in the film at all, does she?
It's named Mom.
Mom.
Yeah.
So first of all, I find it interesting that she's not given a name, whether it's the other lead characters are. But the mother figure also is quite absent in your previous films. And I wonder if with Alpha, you very specifically wanted to explore that figure as kind of this troubled carer, you know, the fact that she's caring for her daughter, her brother, all the patients at the hospital as well. What was your intention with that character?
But that's the thing. The reason why she called Mom is because she is the embodiment of the mother with a capital M, like she's the mother of Alpha, of her brother, of her patients, and of everyone that is needed for care. But at the same time, I did not want her to make a make her a mythological figure, the same way I have done with my characters. With Titane, for example, in Alpha, there is nothing mythologic about it. It's just that the reason why she is called Mom is because she's someone who exists in the world through a mission. And this mission indeed is the care. And it's like unconditional love. She's the only one who's not scared of the patients. She's the only one who is like, who did not abandon them. In many ways, but also I did not want to be, wearing pink. How do you say this? Pink glasses? Like what? I don't know how.
Oh, rose tinted glasses.
Yeah. I didn't want to idealize her either, because I really believe, and that's what Amin says in the film when he says, too much love sometimes can drive people crazy. And I think there is, a reverse side of this coin, which means that when you love someone, you have a responsibility towards that person to respect their freedom, no matter what, no matter circumstances, whether they reject you, whether they want to be out of your life and stuff like this. Love bears a responsibility that is inherent to this emotion, to this feeling. And Mom being the mom, having like an overflowing maternal instinct towards the entire world, tends to, with her brother and her daughter as well, tends to overpass this responsibility out of fear again, because the key word here is always fear. It's always how fear can turn even the most the purest feeling, the purest emotion, the purest unconditional love. If you add fear to this, it can have a vicious effect to it that makes you overpass the other person's boundaries. And that's what she does with her brother when she keeps on like resuscitating Jesus.
Resuscitating.
Thank
it's
you.
a hard word, man.
Oh my God, it's impossible to say. Thank you. And even when he says, I thought we said goodbye. And obviously, this is something that happened in the past, like where she kept on resuscitating him, and where she did not want to let go of him, even if he wanted to live in his own terms. But that's something that she imposes on her daughter as well, out of fear of reliving the same situation. So yeah, Mom is actually, I think, a very complex character for this matter. I cited in the film the Baron of Munchausen at one point, because for me there was something of a Munchausen by proxy, although she was not as it is in the real, disorder. There is something that is linked to wanting to attract attention or to victimize oneself to get the approval of others. That's not at all what Mom is. But I think that in this transfer of trauma, in this transfer of fear, there is something a little bit like the Munchausen by proxy that that leads her to see Amin and Alpha as being the same person, actually. And that's why you have this scene at one point that when she's watching them, they actually move the same way in their beds, that in a kind of a twin-like fantasy, a little bit. And it's important to know that in that scene, it's seen through mom's eyes. It's not something that is objective. She sees them as moving the same way because she starts to associate these two persons as being the same person because they're the same trauma.
No wonder you've mentioned the Baron of Munchausen, but I wonder if the Mask of the Red Death was
Yeah.
also an influence for
Course,
you.
of course, of course. I mean, that was to me that was a very obvious one talking about.
Mm,
In a way, it's reversed. I use it in reverse because in the short story, the Mask of the Red Death enters the castle of Prince Prospero,
yep.
who has invited all the noblest people of the area to protect themselves from the plague when all the poor people are dying outside. And of course, death with a red mask comes with a vengeance and kills every single one of them, including at the end Prince Prospero himself, before he realizes that it was death actually under the mask. So here, the mask of the red death in my film actually appears in a place where all the people who have been marginalized by society can gather and can actually live their lives and be alive, forget about death, forget about an outside look, and actually be themselves, basically. And yet, the Mask of the Red Death appears. So in that moment, for me, it's not like in the short story, like it's not as an avenging figure, it's more like an ominous figure. So in many ways, to me, the way the Mask of the Red Death appears, it gives a tragic aspect to a very lively scene, even though within that scene we see that's a moment where Taha relives the first effects of the disease over his body because he starts petrifying while he's dancing. And so yeah, that's somehow I think that Edgar Poe obviously is a very important author for me. I started reading him a very long time ago when I was a kid, and I think what I like about his work is how love and death are constantly intertwined, which gives obviously this very gothic aspect to it, which I obviously love as well. The melancholy that goes with in, if you wish, in the setup. But I think the way love and death are so intertwined and intertwined also with morals, because most of the time his main characters are extremely amoral in many ways, or like they always get the effects of their bad deeds, they always get
Yeah, they get punished.
exactly constantly. To me, at the end, society got the reverse side of their coin as well. Like they have shamed and abandoned people in need so much that in the end, I think in the way that these marginals are actually elevated to a form of sacred, like the kind of like rise above society is a way for me for society to get the other side of that coin.
We're running out of time, but I just had one last question that sort of ties into this idea as well, because the Red Death in that scene and death is ever present because of this disease. And well, for all of us. And I wonder if you could talk about this decision to make the dying this disease just visually so beautiful and bloodless, of kind of almost eliminating the skin and bones and what we conceive and what we know of as a diseased body and what death actually looks like.
So that came to me very early on. I mean, that was really one of the things that was one of the pillars of the film when it came to my head, because marble is a noble material, you see, and it's this material that is usually dedicated to sculpting saints and kings, in cathedrals, in churches. It's something that is very much linked to sacredness. And I obviously wanted to use this material to apply its symbol, to apply what it represents to the people who have been marginalized by society, as I said before, so that in a way they kind of become our saints and they kind of become our kings in many ways through that, and to, you know, in order to somehow elevate their lives and theirs, to make it count, to kind of set it in stone in a way that you cannot forget about them, and also to give them their dignity back in many ways by implementing this sacredness. So to me, that was very early on. But when you when you use the word beautiful, I think you're saying at something important, because one of my first very naive instinct was to think I want people to see them as beautiful. I want to make them beautiful in the eyes of everybody, basically. And knowing especially, I mean, where I come from with my two first film, knowing my reputation as a filmmaker, I was very wary that people would come to that film expecting a gore fest, and expecting to be scared and expecting to be disgusted and squirming and things like this, which is the opposite of what I wanted to do. To me here, I wanted to use genre in order to create an immediate empathy and an immediate understanding and an immediate sense of embracing these people as belonging to this world, and as people that cannot be ignored, that are actually that deserve to be in this world, you know? And so the question of beauty is very tricky because it's subjective. What I'm going to find beautiful, anyone other than me can find ugly or, I don't know, tasteless or whatever. So it's a very subjective matter that kind of like weighed on me for a long time. And then I kind of like alleviated myself from this conundrum while writing the scene in the waiting room where Alpha runs into her teacher, who's there with his companion. And when I wrote the lines where she tells him, "No, but you are beautiful, that's true." I thought, okay, I projected myself in the direction of the actress, and I thought, she has to really mean it. Like, she doesn't say this out of politeness or out of social awkwardness or whatever. She really, truly means it. And when I thought about this, I thought, okay, my POV of what's beautiful and what's not as a person does not matter. The only POV that matters is my character's POV. And if she thinks that he's beautiful, and if she really truly shows that she believes that, then everybody else in the room will think that they're beautiful. So that kind of alleviated me a little bit from this question of making them beautiful, you see.
I could go on for another half an hour, but we have to wrap up. But thank you so much, Julia. It's always such a pleasure to speak to you about your work.
Thank you so much, Anna. Likewise. I can't wait to see you again.
Me too. Next time in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.